Welcome back, everyone, to the Stay Introverted Podcast. I am your co-host, Jay Coleman,
And I am your other co-host, Steph Laffey.
and we just want to thank you, as always, for joining us on this podcasting journey. Just two introverts talking stuff,
Talking stuff, shooting the shit, all that good
all
stuff.
that.
How many stuffs can I say in one sentence?
I don't know. But today we have a very special guest, so I would like to introduce our good friend of the show, Mr. Ben Schwartz. We
Hey
don't have
everyone.
we don't have a clapper yet, but we'll get one soon.
I
There
have
you
the
go.
worst clap.
There we go. There we go. So, Ben, why don't you tell our listening public a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on the pod. Also, this is my first time on a podcast, so
Hey.
thank you. Thanks for having me on the pod. It's like a dream to say that. So, I'm Ben. I'm from West Orange, New Jersey. I started a co-working community business about a year ago, and Steph and Jay have come to some of the events, and it's been a good time. And we're actually co-hosting something together at the end of the month. So, figured
Yes,
it's a good
we
time
are.
to talk.
Yes,
We'll have to get into that at some point in this episode. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
For sure.
you definitely will. But Ben, tell us a little bit more about the company that you created.
Sure thing. Although also I want to say, I know you guys have spoken in the past about the intros, but I feel like that was pretty a flawless intro. Both of you
Yeah,
guys.
Oh my God, thank you.
we appreciate that.
That was like the first time that we actually got it. Like we actually figured out how to say our names.
We're growing one of y'all.
But yeah, so around I graduated Brandeis University 2021 and started a consulting job working remotely. And I was super excited about it. I was going to be doing IT financial management for fancy consulting firm, dream job, etc. Problem was I was just working by myself, and the first week that's fine, second week it's fine. Maybe like a month in, you start to realize, I'm kind of lonely, and wouldn't it be great to like see people during the workday? But that just wasn't really an option. So, started Tavern to try to mitigate some of that. And I could go on for a very long time about the origins of the company, but I think I'll pause there for a sec.
All right. So
I
let me
love
ask.
that.
Yeah. So this is the Stay Introverted Podcast. So I will ask you, Ben, would you call yourself an introvert?
I was thinking about this. So I saw on another episode you guys talked about extroverted introverts versus introverted extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not so sure it's a binary of being one of the two. I think all of us have a little bit of introversion and extroversion in us. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that everything, introversion, extroversion included, kind of exists on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think that our personalities are no different. I mean, you put me in a room with certain people and I come alive. And then you put me in a certain situation or even around certain people, I just shut down and want nothing to do with anyone. But
Yeah.
it's really all about energy and environment and just kind of time of day, to be honest.
Yeah.
Have I had my coffee yet? Who's around? What are we talking about? So for me, it's very nuanced as I go throughout my day, my week, each month.
Yep. I think I find that I love people, and I also love meeting new people. So in that
Right.
regard, that's not such an introvert trait necessarily. But I kind of like time out after a certain point. Like, Jay and I were talking before the pod started, just like, man, talking for an hour and a half on a podcast, that's like intimidating, that's a long time. So, love people, but also need time to rest and recharge.
Right.
Yeah, and I think to Steph's point, introversion does definitely exist on a spectrum. I think we have our stereotypical ideas of how and what introverts are, but I think that no two introverts are 100% the same. Some
Yeah.
of us are, uh, fortunately or unfortunately, more antisocial than others. Some of us can um, be more extroverted or bubbly when the time comes. But I think the common denominator is that no matter how social or not you are, if you find yourself having to leave in order to recharge fully, I
Yeah.
think that makes you an introvert. It's just what flavor of introversion are you? How
Yeah.
long? Some of us can socialize a lot longer than others. Me, depending on the space and the people I'm with, I could talk for hours. But there are times where I lose focus after somebody says hi. My name is. It depends. it depends. Uh,
One thing I also think, I think a lot of people might not be aware that they're introverts.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have talked about this before, but for example, over this weekend, we'd all been hanging out and having a great time. But at some point I said, guys, I think I'm going to go to bed. And I was the first one to go to bed. Everyone else, stays up hanging out a little bit longer. And I found out the next morning that, a fight broke out. Now, if I had stayed, I might have also, become grumpy or less social or something like that. And I think it's possible that, that person, someone in the group might actually have been an introvert and needed to rest, but, they just keep pushing through. And, sometimes a fight can break out or something like that.
well, I mean,
That is such a good point. Oh my God. I
I'm
never
sorry.
even
Hold on,
thought
hold on.
about that.
Yes, we'll get to that. We need details. How did this fight start?
Oh, man. I don't know how much I should really. I think it's just you're at the farm show, you're having a great time, and just sometimes fights break out. That's how it goes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
just,
keep
All
it
right.
vague.
I'm
We'll
just.
let you plead the fifth on that one.
All right. I mean, I was just asking for a friend, and by friend,
Oh
I mean
yeah,
our entire listening audience.
audience.
Yes, yes. But
That's Yeah, no, I like that's such a good point because like as our audience knows by now, when I'm hungry, well, let's say when I'm hungry, I become hangry, and when I'm hangry, I become kind of a bitch. And so, I mean, luckily I couldn't hurt a fly, but like I can imagine that if I was the type to like fight or like get really pissed off and like not be able to use my words, I could definitely see myself being the type, especially before I knew I was an introvert and knew I needed to take a step back.
Yeah.
I could see myself kind of getting like really worked up or pissed off if I had too much and didn't take a step back. So,
Also, I've got to clarify, this was not a physical fight. This
oh,
one was
okay.
very clear. Yeah, this was like an emotional fight, man. As
Gotcha.
things go.
okay.
I've been in my share of those late at night.
Okay, great. It'll come back to me.
Well, to your first point, Ben, I think you're right. There are, um, I definitely have encountered people who didn't realize that they were actually introverted. They just thought
Yeah.
that, unfortunately, a lot of them thought that something was wrong with them. Like they always knew that they were different because they, you know, being around a lot of people, talking for a long time, going out to all these social events doesn't really do it for them. In fact, it actually drains them. So they always thought that they were kind of like an oddball, and I definitely understand that because that's how I felt for really the majority of my life. So in my community, I'm one of the most common um, forms of feedback that I get was, yeah, I feel seen, I feel understood. I didn't realize that this was actually what being an introvert was. I think,
That's really meaningful.
yeah, and I also think that introversion and introverts has this sort of negative connotation to it, where it's like you hope you're not an introvert because you think it means all these bad things, and really, there it's not a bad thing to be introverted. You're just different, and that's okay. And some of the most famous, well-known, successful people on this planet are actually introverts.
Yep.
We're out here making moves and doing big things. So there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, but you're absolutely right. I think there are a lot of people who are, particularly recently, just discovering that they're actually an introvert, and it's pretty cool because,
or that they've got introvert tendencies.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, when you're Steph and I have talk about this. When you're younger, you know that something's different, but you may or may not have the words to articulate it because you're young.
Right.
But as you get older, hopefully you're able to look inward and really understand that there's nothing wrong with you. You're just quiet, or just reserved, or just an introvert.
Right. It's
Absolutely.
insightful.
And I think
that introverts, need community and social interaction too. I think, sometimes people think introverts, they'll just kind of stick around in their room all day and not want to talk to anyone. It's really not true. Everyone needs community. And I think this is something that definitely showed itself, 2020 and post 2020. Staying inside all the time isn't healthy, right? For your mental
health. Not natural.
Exactly. And you really, even if you do recharge by being alone, you still need people. And you still need to go and, socially interact. And I think, just tying it back in, that's what Tavern Community is all about. Remote work is fine if you're working from your house for a day or your apartment for a day. But in the long run, it's not really a sustainable way to be. So, your alternatives are, well, you could go to an office. First, that's expensive. You can go to a co-working space, also expensive, between $150 and $800 a month.
Wow.
You can go to coffee shops, but you're not really meant to meet other people there. You can if you're skilled or feeling the vibe, but it's not a space that's meant for social interaction.
Right.
Also, now a lot of coffee shops are actually removing Wi-Fi because they don't want remote workers there. That's
a good selling point for you.
Oh yeah. And it's unfortunate on the consumer end, but also it just goes to show there's really a need for something different, and that's what I've been trying to create.
I love that. There's so much to unpack here. So for one thing, what I love about Tavern, I'm just gonna kind of shoot from the hip and like with what I remember. And like you said something about how like you could go to a coffee shop and sit and work, and you can technically meet people there because there are people around, but it's not really meant for people to interact. Like I know for me, when I'm at the gym or when I'm at the coffee shop working or when I'm at the library, like, okay, there's people around, but like, I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
Like, I'm here to like do my thing and like focus on work, and I just don't want to be in my house. But like,
or even if you are in the mood to meet someone, maybe they're not in the mood to meet you, right? And
exactly. Right. Well, and like, go ahead, Jay.
I'm sorry. Well, I think there's also one big issue, and for the record, I do agree with you, Ben, that even the most introverted of introverts needs to interact with some other human being. Like we are a social species. We do need to interact, and it really took me a long time to admit that to myself, to the point where it's hard for me to now build friendships and relationships because I don't have the practice. I always, it was always easier for me to just kind of go off on my own if someone was in my space or if someone annoyed me than to actually try to power through.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that might be a challenge for us, but also for me, even if you take that first step and kind of make it a point to really put yourself out there, I think the one thing or one of the things that hold us back is that most of us are very sensitive or aware of our energy, and it's like we don't want to waste our time or our energy like on the wrong person. Like we don't want to start talking to someone and realize this isn't going anywhere, and now all of a sudden we're drained.
Yeah,
I think we're really looking for that authentic connection, but it's hard because you can't just see on someone's forehead authentic connection. You have to actually go out there and talk to people. So it's really, for me, that's very hard to do because it's like, what if it doesn't work out? What am I going to do? But I guess a question I have for either one of you is, how do you move past that in order to build, try to build some sort of a community for yourself as an introvert?
One thought that came to me just as you were saying that, it sounded a lot like dating, right? And I know a lot of people, myself included, really don't like going on like first dates or second dates because they're superficial and it's hard to connect with a stranger or someone new. But if you want to find a deeper connection, you kind of have to go through those earlier stages. So it just reminded me of a lot of those parallels.
It just that. Well, I would say it kind of is like that because dating is hard for me as well. Because there's like, I want my own space, but I also want you in my space while I have my own space. So it's like, I don't know why I'm like this.
Hey, it's everybody has their own like needs and boundaries and space, and like we all are kind of doing our own thing and trying to figure it out, and like we're all on our own journeys, and like everybody's on their own journeys trying to figure it out. So it's just deciding, how you want to exist in the world and how far apart you want other people to be, or how close you want other people to be in proximity to you.
It's really funny. Go ahead, Steph. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just kind of trailing off, but yeah, go ahead.
Just my girlfriend, when she was a kid, her mom, was going to give her a hug, and she turned around and she said, I want to be held but not touched.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it.
And I think
brilliant. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, throughout different parts of my life, I remember when I was younger, not necessarily wanting to be like touched or always have other people around me, but feeling like a weirdo if I said anything. So I just kind of had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, I'm starting to learn how to express my boundaries in terms of not just being physically touched, but like, talking to me, and like when I'm ready to have a conversation. I used to think that like the second that somebody wanted my attention, I had to drop everything and pay attention to them.
Right.
Because that's sort of how we're raised, like, oh, that's social norms. But I think being introverted in an extroverted world and recognizing that allows us to actually communicate what our needs and boundaries are so that we can interact with other people in a way that's comfortable for us.
Right. That was deep, Steph.
Damn, I don't know where that came from.
Steph's speaking the gospel. Oh my goodness.
I had like 6 cups of coffee today, so
yeah. Well, I think
that's a lot more than my norm.
But you're absolutely right, though, Steph. It's kind of like, it's kind of like we live in 2 different worlds, and unfortunately, like the extroverts, that's considered standard or the norm, and us as introverts have to understand it and understand how to navigate that while also managing ourselves. Knowing that we just don't have the energy or the desire to be that way, but knowing that unfortunately society dictates to a certain extent that you have to kind of go along with it. So you're absolutely right.
Well, I hope that there's less stigma now.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I hope that there's less stigma now, and that's a big role that you guys are are playing in kind of reducing stigma around things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Steph and I, and even you, man. We're all doing our best, and we're all kind of in our own ways doing things to reduce the stigma or get rid of it totally. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't people don't expect introverts to start their own business or start a podcast or start a community like Tavern. It's just not something that
Right.
folks expect.
Right.
So yeah, I think we're out here shattering myths and debunking stereotypes and getting rid of stigmas. It's it's good to see. I think we still have a ways to go, but we're definitely out here doing it.
For sure.
Absolutely. And I think with the online space, with everybody kind of like thinking about their personalities and like really trying to figure out their purpose in the world, I think there's a lot more room for dialogue about this kind of stuff that I don't recall ever existing before the pandemic. I don't remember seeing any of this kind of conversation, but then again, I wasn't really on social media, so
Right.
I don't really know if I would have seen it.
I didn't realize you only started social media stuff post-pandemic.
Yeah, I started in 2020 because I was
Okay.
bored out of my freaking mind. I went from working 16 hours a day, being out of the house 16 hours a day, to like twiddling my thumbs at work for
Yeah.
3 hours, and like not being able to go to the gym and not being able to see my friends. Like my whole world just stopped, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll try this social media thing.
Yep. And what I think is interesting is that a lot of those, those months in social isolation, they really left an impact. And I think they've definitely changed how people interact post-pandemic too. So, for a couple months, people were isolated. It's that I think people interact differently now because of that time.
How do you think that is? Like what, like, I agree, but I would love to hear sort of your take on that.
Sure. I think it's a couple things. Going to work 16 hours a day, and then that routine is ripped from you. It goes from being alone goes from an occasional experience to something that you have every day, and it kind of rips off the Band-Aid. I think, unfortunately, I think this is to the detriment of society a little bit. It's not necessarily good to be inside all the time. And I saw I think South Korea has a program now where they're actually paying young people to leave the house.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Can I go there?
Yeah, no, it's a good way to earn cash. But I think, that's something that we'd only see post-pandemic. I also think people are, I think people meet less frequently. So I was just having a conversation with someone today. And he said, he's come out to a bunch of our events. He said, before the pandemic, he would just go to lunch with a bunch of his buddies, and they would meet up for like breakfast and lunch. Sometimes twice a day during the week. While they were, at work, they'd take time to meet each other. Now they don't do that. And so, what exactly happened? I'm not sure, but there's definitely been a shift.
Absolutely. And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I can speak from my own experience. A big part of the reason, sort of in the middle of the pandemic, why I started to all of a sudden go from like desperately wanting to leave the apartment to like having no desire to see anybody or speak to anybody was I put on a ton of weight. I didn't want anybody to see me that way. I kind of started to get into this bad habit of staying up really late, like all night, and like waking up late, starting my day late. Like my routine was all messed up, so my headspace was all messed up, and I couldn't really hold a conversation. I wasn't feeling good in my body. I wasn't feeling good in my mind. Like I disconnected with myself, even though I was alone so often. It was very strange. And so I'm curious, sort of, if you think any of that played a role in why people are having a hard time getting back out there.
Yeah, and one thing you said really resonated with me. I remember it was the first party that I was going to post-pandemic in social isolation. One of my closest friends from growing up, next door neighbor, he had it was his engagement party, and so I went and I was ready to have a good time, but I found that I just had a lot of trouble talking to people, and that's not a problem I'd ever had before. I really, I do enjoy talking to people, at least until my social battery goes. But this was I think I lost my social skills. And thank God they've come back. And now I can talk like a regular human again. But it was definitely jarring. And I'm sure if it happened to me, it happened to a lot of other people too.
See, I actually have a different perspective.
Oh yeah.
And again, it's not I'm not disagreeing with either one of you. I think both of your points are true. I just think there's also a population of people who, when we pre-pandemic, I think we all kind of kept to ourselves. And when I say kept to ourselves, I mean, we just kind of stay with our own social circles, whatever that may be. But it's going to the bar, going to a game with your friends, and that was kind of what you did. There wasn't any real difference. But I think once the pandemic started, and as you said, Ben, we had to get used to, first of all, being alone and not being able to go out and hang out with our friends. I think for some of us, it actually gave us an opportunity to kind of to be our true selves, our most authentic selves, without that sort of pressure. I think,
right.
And I think you're seeing a lot of that, particularly with introverts. I'll just speaking for myself. Everything I'm doing now, I would have never even considered pre-pandemic, but
right.
I'm out here making, being on camera and making reels and engaging with my community. I'm trying to make it a point to actually share more of myself with my community. I would never think of that 2019, 2018. So I think in some ways it kind of helps. There's an opportunity that I think a lot of people took to actually build and expand their community, albeit in a digital space.
I think that's brilliant, and it's definitely a different vein of thinking than what I had been talking about before. But it does remind me that there's a Chabad rabbi. I'm a Jewish guy, so there's a Chabad rabbi I know, and one of his reflections was that social isolation, the pandemic, really stripped away a lot of fake things, or things that mask the truth, and reveal what's underneath. And sometimes it's, you find something beautiful and new, and sometimes you also realize that maybe some things weren't what you thought they were. But I think it, definitely speaks to your point, Jay, that folks found meaning from that as well.
Yeah. I think we all have, I think we all kind of got to the same place. It just, and each of us kind of took a different path.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just reflect on that for a second, because pre-pandemic, what are the chances that the three of us would have ended up on a podcast together talking about loneliness and introversion? I don't know about you, but I never would have pictured this.
So funny. No, it's really crazy how life works.
Absolutely. Pre-pandemic, I mean, even 2 years ago, even 3 months ago, when we first launched a podcast, my friends were like, "You're starting a podcast? Aren't you afraid of the phone?" And I was like, "Yep." But we're gonna fix that with the podcast.
Yeah.
I love it.
Same.
It's wild. So Ben, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, or
Sure.
like not really switch gears, but sort of. Um, Something that has been coming to mind a lot recently is I think that the reason like that I've started to kind of enjoy this like hybrid schedule that I'm in, and enjoy being by myself sometimes while also having the benefit of seeing people like sometimes when I go to the office or when I meet up with people is I've started to shift the language that I use when I talk about being by myself.
Mm,
So rather than saying I need to be alone right now or I need to be by myself right now, which is kind of like isolating language,
yeah.
I've started saying I want to be with myself right now. I want to spend time with myself. And I really shifted into that mentality of like, I'm a good time by myself and I enjoy the company of me. And like it just made being with myself a lot more enjoyable, which I would imagine has probably made me more enjoyable to be around other people.
Wow. I love that. Are you cool if I start doing that too?
Please do. I want the whole world to embrace this language.
Okay. Um, you know, a couple years ago, I was kind of unhappy with the direction I was headed um, in life. And I had this moment where I said to myself, you know, you have to live with yourself the rest of your life, and you have to be accountable to yourself for what you want, and you have to pursue what you think is right. And that's, that moment definitely inspired a lot of the ways that I've been thinking about, what I'm doing now and what I hope to do in the future. So, spending time with yourself and being comfortable with yourself, I think it's one of the most important things you can do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Jay, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll definitely agree. I used to just love being by myself, but now I actually actually use that time to learn more about myself. Like kind of how you said, to actually be with myself by myself.
Yeah.
And through that, I'm able to uh, learn more about myself and understand that hey, I actually don't always want to be alone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just uh, again something that I don't think happens pre-pandemic. So it's definitely 2020 definitely changed changed the world in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them terribly, but I think there's also an opportunity for introverts to really take a honest, authentic look at themselves and try to decide um, the type of person that they want to be and present to the world.
Absolutely. And one chance I had to do that was actually at a workshop that Steph ran. It was a journaling workshop.
Oh yeah.
And Steph basically led a small group. It was also a tavern event. A small group in a journaling workshop where I think we were reflecting. She was teaching us something called stream of consciousness journaling. Did I get that right?
You did. And before you continue, can I just interject with something really interesting?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So the episode that's gonna air right before your episode is about stream of consciousness journaling, and we really went deep into it.
All right.
Yeah, the woman who taught me all about it was the one that came on. So, I love that we're talking about this right now.
Amazing.
But anyway, keep going.
Oh, so I got it right. Stream of consciousness.
Yeah, you did.
Journaling, and you just sit with yourself for. I think it was supposed to be longer than 15 minutes, but I think we only had time for 15 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Of just kind of writing your thoughts without judging them, without thinking about them too much, and seeing what comes out. And I thought it was a really great way just to learn more about yourself. And there's something about writing it down that makes a big difference from just thoughts kind of swirling in your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it clears space for like newer, deeper thoughts that like, because a lot of the times I think, I don't know about you, but before I started that type of journaling, my brain was just like a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Like there
like
was so
swirling.
much shit swirling around at all times. I couldn't even think straight.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Jay, do
so,
you journal at all? Oh, sorry, Steph. I thought you were done
oh
with this.
no, you're fine. You're fine. I just talk in circles. So, Jay, do you journal?
I'm getting more into journaling. It's more um, as a part of my therapy. Um,
Hmm,
Shout out to therapy, by the way. Um,
love it.
yes, more people need it in their lives.
Yes.
But I journal more as a form of therapy, with just kind of to just get all the stuff, anger and whatnot, out of my head, onto paper, so that I'm not weighed down by it anymore.
Yep.
So I haven't graduated to stream of consciousness journaling just yet. Um, Again, I'm more journaling for a different purpose, but I do journal.
Awesome. I mean, in some ways, we are kind of journaling every week by hopping on the podcast and just speaking our minds.
This
That's
is
true.
true. Very true.
Whoa.
It's like a 21st century journal.
I really like that approach.
This is a very public journal that's going to live forever.
So I was earlier on, I didn't want to go too much into the business, but I would love to share some more about the business and what we're trying to do and how it works and all that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in the story so far, we've gotten to the point where working home alone, it's no good, and the alternative solutions aren't very good either. And so I actually I started running a program in my local synagogue, and it was just to bring people together who are working from home. And we would do it once a week. We'd bring, pizza and donuts, and it was just a good time. And it was kind of a lounge where people could come and hang out for a couple hours. And then I realized, well, that worked nicely, and people said it really enhanced their day. And also, some even said it enhanced their productivity. And one guy wrote most of a book when he was working in this space. He's a good friend of mine. And I realized, well, lots of other people probably knew this too. And so, that was on the customer demand side, figuring it out. Then there's also the other half of this, which, the main reason that WeWork and other co-working companies struggle is because they're real estate businesses. So they lease space or buy, and then they chop up the buildings, figuratively, and do short-term leases and rentals, and they have members using that space and paying them, often at a premium. Problem is that business model doesn't really work very well because you have to charge through the roof in order to actually, pay your own lease. So what I had realized was, the synagogue gave us free space because we were helping them increase engagement. Well, lots of other groups want to increase engagement too, like hotels and bars and restaurants. And so I started making deals with restaurants saying, hey, if you give us your space for the day, I'll bring you 35 customers. And so that's, the first time we did that. I think it was in February of last year, February 2023. And it was great because typically to, get a space like that costs thousands of dollars. But because we're doing this during the workday, when the restaurants are underutilized, so we can get the space much cheaper, right? And they're not charging us through the roof prices. And so that's the model that it's built upon. And on principle, it's the same as with the synagogue, right? The synagogue wants to increase engagement. The restaurants want to increase customer flow. And it's a win-win. And I think it's often, I think it's rare to find businesses that are mission driven and win-wins. Here the restaurants win because they're getting more customers. Tavern wins because we're getting space. Customers win because they're getting a better hospitality experience. So there's no real downside. And that's how the business model works. So that's the first half I want to talk about. The second half is, well, how do you actually build community? And I think one problem that places like, well, other co-working spaces have is if you just put people in a room together, they're not necessarily going to bond. Because what you're saying is, geographic proximity is what enables people to bond with each other. But it's not really true. What enables people to bond is intentionality. And that's like a key word for me. It's about bringing people together who want to be together and are intending to be together. And this works best if it's a group with something in common. So, the event we're doing at the end of January, it's for podcasters. Another event we're doing is for creative minds. One of our biggest cohorts is entrepreneurs and creatives of color. We're hoping to do an LGBTQIA plus event over the next coming months, and women. It's basically any group, whether it's a professional group, an interest group, a hobby or identity, or gender or ethnicity. People want to meet people like themselves, and something that they have some. And that's the formula to building community. And one other part of the building community equation is it's hard to just, like I said, put people in a space and expect them to connect. But we have a routine, a schedule where it's community lunch, co-working time, and then happy hour at the end of the day. And this is a social infrastructure that's, it's new in that we're presenting it as, a new set structure, but it's also very familiar. And people since the beginning of time have bonded over food and drink easier than just in an empty space. And so, it's a familiar principle, but newly applied. And that's the secret sauce behind community building.
Wow. Holy crap. We need a clapper. We really need a clapper.
Thanks.
Nice. So let me ask you, Ben, so where do you see the business going in the next few years?
My hope and intention is to replace WeWork as the leader of the co-working industry. Obviously, that's a rather lofty goal. But, the trends are there to support us. And also, well, this is a mission-driven thing. We're charging like $10 a ticket or $30 a month. And, compare that to other places that charge $400 a month for a membership, right? I'm doing this for the community building. I'm doing this to reduce social isolation and try to assemble as many community organizers as possible and, A, help them grow their communities, B, help them make event planning easier for them, and C, to also monetize their community. This way they can benefit. Right now, let's say you're a community organizer and you want to host a happy hour mixer. It could cost you $2,500 because you have to guarantee the restaurant a certain minimum spend, which it's a lot to sign on for. And so what this means is it's often expensive because you have to pass that cost on to the customer, which means people have to buy expensive tickets. And that just, it discourages people from hosting events. But if you work with Tavern, we help you find the space and you get it for free. We give your network visibility, and we also give you 10% of, everything that's ordered food and beverage from the restaurant. So, where do I see it going? I see it expanding really quickly because it's grassroots, and it's very real. So my hope and intention is to first grow it in New York. And, we're we've only been around like, well, almost a year. I think we're almost at 4,000 followers, which is like, I know in the scheme of Instagram that's not a ton, but to
That's
me,
amazing.
thanks. And I think people are really excited about what we're doing, and you know that you've hit a chord with something that resonates when our customers often just like repost our stories, or and sometimes they'll like cheer me on online, which is very kind to them. But it's because I'm trying to do something good and something new in a way that's affordable and meaningful for a lot of people.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
So a quick question for you is, do you think that the reason that, I mean, I think I know the answer, but do you think that the inspiration behind you starting this would have happened without you having that experience of having to work from home and
No.
feeling isolated?
No, I would have, if I were with my colleagues at work in person, and I would have never ended up doing this.
Isn't that wild how like in a parallel universe, we'd all just be in like probably completely different spaces in our lives.
So crazy. It really is so crazy. And I have to tell you, when you're going through it, it's not fun. And
Yeah.
I really was just so lonely working from my house all day, and there weren't really good options of what to do. And that's where this all comes from.
Right.
So
I almost wonder, I mean, for me, this is an inspiration to like, how can we look at our struggles as like, not only will this pass at some point, but that could be our $1 million idea.
Right. Yeah, I would have been much, if I really weren't forced to have started to do this by my own heart and mind, I would not be doing this for sure.
Right. Oh, well, it sounds like I feel like, this is a really good place to kind of wrap it up. I mean, this was such a powerful conversation. Like, I learned so much, and I'm actually really excited to go back and re-listen. And I think that by the time this episode airs, it might be the week before we all get together in person, or it might be the day after we all get together. I'm really bad at calendars. But I'm just so excited that the three of us are going to get to meet in person. Maybe we will set this up to air the day after so we can make the cover like a picture of the three of us.
Oh, that's fun. That's
fun. Or we could have it air that week. Yeah.
Okay, I've been thinking it would be good for a promo too, to let people know about it. But whichever way is good with me. It's going to be, we've got a bunch of signups already, and it's going to be a good time.
Oh, we do? I haven't even checked. That's awesome.
Well, either way, whether this episode comes out before or after our event, we definitely hope to see as many of our tri-state area peeps as possible. Definitely, come say hi to Steph, Ben, and myself. Looking forward to seeing you. I do think this is probably a good place to end because I am actually hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you this time.
Yes, I am the hungry one.
That's
well, I'm right behind you.
So, Ben, now is the point in the show where I tell Steph to do the thing. And Steph does the thing. So, Steph, do the thing.
All right, I'll do the thing. Before I do the thing, though, Ben, where can people? I know we just kind of talked at length about Tavern Community, what it's all about, but where can people follow you, find you?
Yeah. So check us out on Instagram at Tavern Community, and then you can also, click on the link in bio to subscribe and stay tuned for updates.
And get on that email list because I think you guys send out like deals, and I don't know, I could be making that up, but I always get your emails and they're pretty awesome.
Thanks.
So thank you so much. That was Ben Schwartz from Tavern Community, And we are Jay and Steph from the Stay Introverted Podcast. And if you absolutely love this episode, which we know you did, be sure to rate it, review it, subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and tune in to the next episode. We love you guys and stay introverted.
Stay introverted, fam.
Did I just get that?
You got it.
What?
We definitely have to invest in a clapper.
Is that going to be the title of the episode?
What? We need to get a clapper?
No, I don't know. I think it's time to hop off. But have a good night, everyone, or night, whatever time it is that you're listening to us. Have a good day.
Thanks again for having me on, guys.
Thank you for joining us.
There we go, ruining it.
We'll catch you later, Introvert fam. Peace out.
Bye.